Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with some Darkest Dungeon. You can tell this rulebook has been run through. I've been all over this game here recently, talked about it in another recent video as well. So if you haven't seen one of my videos where I do this type of review before, I do what I call a review through, where I'm going over the course of the game, going over the components, how it plays, all the good stuff, and then playing through a little bit of an example of the game and let you kind of see how it works. Depending on the game and its size will determine the size of the amount of gameplay that I actually have in it. It's a rather long video, so check here if you want to go to where the gameplay actually starts, and check here if you want to go to just the final thoughts part of the game. But as I said, we're going to go through it, look at the components, kind of overview of the game, play through a little segment of the game, and then some final thoughts about it. All right, so here we are down to the table, and you're going to notice one of the first critiques right here off the bat. And that is just how dark these components are. And they're extremely glossy on top of them being dark. Okay, so this is causing a huge issue when it comes to filming. You can see just a little bit of shadow, right? Because usually all my light is overhead. It's reflected down. I don't have direct light on this. It's bouncing around the room down to it. And even still, it's so glossy, it makes a lot of the components hard to pick out. This has the same issues that I think it was Resident Evil 2, the board game, had, in the fact that, yes, the game is dark and the components need to be dark, but you overcompensated with the dark to the point that some of them are hard to see. It's especially noticeable here on the player boards. Some of the other pieces aren't quite as bad. The cards are tolerable, but especially here on the player boards, you'll see it on the map here in a little bit as well. A lot of those are just so dark, it's hard to pick out some of the specifics that are on them. And then again, with the finish that's on this, it makes it almost impossible to film. Now, here is just a quick example for you guys. I've cut off almost all of my lights, and you'll actually notice it almost makes it a little bit easier to see in the fact that it's not as bad, but you're still getting that hard to pick out stuff from a lot of these components because, again, they are so dark. But again, the game's called Darkest Dungeon, so you kind of expect it. Now, I will try to mitigate this where I can to try to make it a little bit easier. It won't be hopefully quite as bad, and I'll work with the lighting when we get over to the actual game proper. So when we're looking at the game, we're going to go across these components here. We're going to have your cards. There's going to be varying cards for each one of your characters. This one is the Crusader. He's one of the main first ones you'll see in the video game and be using in the board game if you decide to start with the easier group, the easier team to start with. These cards are going to have a level indicated on them. You'll start at level 1 and work your way up. They go up to level 2 and then level 3, and you'll notice that they do pick up extra stats, like his resistance, his dodge goes up, his health goes up. Here at level 1, he doesn't have any dodge. His health's a little bit lower. And then they do have some Hamlet, which is when you're in town, special abilities as well. And then the only other icon you need to concern yourself with is this footprint here. This indicates how fast the unit is. So you'll take and combine this with their player board. You're going to have 4 of these in the game, okay? You are going to look at your player board here. And again, I'm trying to mitigate the glossy. I'm so sorry. It's so hard to see. Okay, I've actually cut the light down because I think that's going to be a little bit easier for you guys to see. And I'll fluctuate it as we go along to try to work with this finish that we have on here. But on the boards themselves, you're going to have 3 sets of skills you can start with, and then you can unlock extra spaces as you level your characters up. They're going to have the ability to pick up diseases or virtues, things like that, which are going to be indicated here at the side of the board. And then their stress level here at the top of the board, which this token does flip. So once it's on its red side and maxed out again, you are going to lose the character. Now, they did a good job, I have to say, real good job of picking up the skills, the tactics from the video game itself and translating that down into a board game. So looking at his skills here, these are the ones that are recommended in the beginner team and the skills that they recommend you start with. And I think they do that because some of the people who are going to be playing this game aren't going to be familiar with the video game. Now, I'm not familiar with the video game. I've watched a lot of videos about the game, but I've played it somewhat. I haven't played it too much. So they give you those recommendations so you're able to kind of jump into the board game without that foreknowledge that the video game is going to bring to you, because that is going to help you. You'll understand the skills better and what they're really meant to do. As you're looking at your skills, it's going to show you a number of different things. Up here at the top right, that's the locations you can use that skill from, because you're not going to be able to use it in every location. That has to do with our stance board down here. We see our Crusader is in the farthest forward stance. So he's right up front. Then Hellion, then Highwayman, and Vestal here in the back. Basically, these are your support. This is your range. These are more your tanky, aggressive, melee type characters. But they have different skills, and the game's designed for you to be switching back and forth around. The enemy's going to be pulling you back and forth around, and your attacks or skills will only be able to hit certain ranges. So moving around on this board is a part of the game. We see here for his skills, the ones that they recommend you start with give him abilities in different ranges, in different stances. So these two can be used in the first two stances, and this one can be used in the last two stances. You don't ever want to have all of your skills located in just one or two stances, because if you do, then you're not going to be able to do anything if you get moved around. You will simply have nothing you can do. Now, looking further on this, below on the skills, right, shows a symbol of it, and then this is what it does. This over here to our left shows us the range and how many targets it can hit. So for Smite 1, it's range 0, so he has to actually be in the same area as the enemy to use this, and he can only target one enemy with it. Here to the right, we have our accuracy and crit. Accuracy is you have to roll that number or under on a D10 minus their modifiers, which is usually going to be dodge. And then if you hit that number under, you're going to do X amount of damage. If you hit that number under, as far as whatever is listed here with the crit, then you will do critical damage. So it's 7 damage and a critical hit will do 13. There can be symbols down here to the bottom left and bottom right. We see as an example here for Holy Lance, it has a symbol on both areas. On the bottom left, this is what it does to your character. It does this self thing. In this case, it pulls him 1. And on the bottom right, this will be applied to whatever your target is, which can be a friendly or a enemy, depending on the skill. But in this case, his attacks do +1 damage versus unholy enemies. So that would be applied to whatever damage is done. But this is not going to be done if you do not hit your target, obviously. And just because I'm rather proud, I think the minis came out rather decent. This is the Crusader mini. And I got to say, I like the minis. They have a nice, what's the aesthetic? They really match the Darkest Dungeon aesthetic. They've almost got a little bit of a cartoony feel to them. So this one I think came out pretty well. And I'm going to quickly show you the ones for the others. We've got Hellion here. She's got her nice little blue stripe across her face. She's a big damage dealer. Our ranged guy with our Highwaymen, right? Looking pretty snazzy there in his little coat covering his face. And then, of course, everybody's favorite, Vestal, right? Back here doing some healing, tossing out some damage with her mace occasionally when she gets the chance, but pretty awesome. And just because I just did finish this one up, we've got the Bounty Hunter here as well. Now, there are so many in the minis in this game that I'm probably not going to paint them all. I just don't have the time to paint the sheer volume that are included in this game. So I'm focusing on the heroes. And if you're like me and you like to paint your minis, I would suggest doing the same thing. Paint your heroes, maybe the bosses, and be done with it. There's so many other minis that it's really not that big of a deal. If you want to, hit them with a black primer and a dry brush and you're good enough. You can call it a day. Now, we're not going to go over all the skills for all the other different characters. It'll take too long and the video will go on forever. So don't worry about that. But you are going to see their skills and how they play out when we get into the mission proper. We start moving through some rooms and letting you guys see how they're going to operate. Now, the only other thing that we have over here that I want to touch on real quick while I'm at it is our combat board. The combat rounds, you're going to have 4, and if you don't complete it in 4, you're going to be failing the mission. You'll fail the combat, and you'll have to leave and start it over again. Not good. You want to crack it out as quick as possible. I have a couple extra tokens laid on here. The money I have left from setting up, resting token as well. And then down here to the right, this is your light level because that's going to go up and down throughout your trip through the dungeon. So when you start off at your highest level, your heroes receive a bonus. But as this starts ticking down, it's going to get worse. And it's cumulative. It's not this applies here, this applies here, and this applies here. It is everything applies as it goes on. So if you're down here in 2, you're going to have this debuff and this debuff. So make sure you pay attention to these, and obviously you're going to try to keep your light level high. I'm sure there's going to be some people who do torch runs, like no torch runs in this game, just like there is in the video game, but we'll have to see how it plays out. All right, located here, we have our dungeon map, which I've already gone ahead and randomly drawn, and the Hamlet board. And again, I know it looks dark. It's kind of hard to see. That's not on me. That's the components. They're so dark. It's so hard for me to show you guys. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can here. The board itself, you're going to set up during your setup. I go ahead and I put my treasure tokens there, randomly stacked, so I can have them ready. And then our little token for our party as it's going to move through. I will touch on that a little bit further as we get into the mission. Now, just so you can see that, you are going to randomly draw a quest, right? Shows the quest level. We're going to start off with the level 1s, and it'll give you a little blurb about what's going on and then any special rules. Special rule for this one involves this specific map board. So I went ahead and grabbed out the card for that and that board, and we're going to be playing this quest. All right, randomly drew it, and then it tells us what XP we're going to gain from the quest. Down here at the bottom, it tells us what tiles are going to go on that board. So the one that I just had sitting here, those tokens that are on it are represented by this, and that's different objectives or empty rooms or curios or treasure or layers. That's what all of these represent. And you're going to randomly shuffle those together and then place them out to create your map. Now, obviously, these are going to change depending on what quest you're doing, any special conditions, but it is relatively easy at the start because you're going to be starting with those level 1 quests and then work up towards that first boss. The boss cards are going to look like this, and they'll have special conditions on them, but they do have different levels of the boss. So the boss can go up in strength as well. All right, so here's our Hamlet board. Now, this is what you're going to be doing in between missions. And just like in the video game, you're going to come here to heal your heroes, to take away their stress, to buy new trinkets, to get all of that good stuff. Now, there are cardboard tokens to improve each one of these different sections of the Hamlet board. So you can increase them from their level 1 levels up to level 2 and 3, and that will improve the condition and what they provide. So just as an example here, we have the tavern, right, and its abilities. And if we upgrade that to level 2, we're going to take this level 2 token and we're going to place it there, and it's going to improve the options that you're going to have when you go to the tavern. And you can do that for all of them with, I think, the exception of the stagecoach, but I could be wrong. Also, on the back of your light token, so here's your light token from the mission board. You flip that over, that also becomes your day token. All right. So, whatever Hamlet quest that you get in between your missions, you're going to look at it and it'll tell you how many days you have left. And that reduces the amount of time you can spend in the Hamlet. So, you can't stay here forever just doing everything you can to buff your guys as much as possible. You do have a limited amount of time. Also, on top of that, you are going to have the caretaker, and he will occupy one of these locations, blocking it off. So if he goes here, it blocks it off, and then your own heroes will take their spots when they go to certain areas. So you can't send a bunch of characters all to the same spot. Only one can go to each of these different locations per day. So that can become an issue. You really have to think hard of who needs what the most and make those choices. So here I've got everything set up, but the last couple things I want to touch on are the few parts that I haven't yet mentioned when it comes to setup. All right. We do have to randomly draw our quest. We have to randomly draw our dungeon, the one I just showed you that had all the rooms on there, right? The other thing is you are going to have these provision dice. Now, these dice have multiple different sides on them. Just like you're going to have in the game, you're going to have shovels or food or bandages or potions or torches, or in this case, a wild side, which can be turned to any side that you want to when you roll it. The way it's going to work is before you start, you're going to have 2 of those dice per each one of your heroes. You'll roll it and then you'll get whatever you get. If you get a wild, you can turn it to either side. Now, I am playing this on the easy version where you get to pick. So when you get your 2 provision dice, you get to pick for one of the dice and then you'll roll the other. So for 4 of those, I got to pick what I wanted, and then the other 4 I rolled off and got whatever it rolled to. Those dice are going to be used when we do our exploration or encounter anything else in our time in the dungeon. They can be used, as it references here, to take out things like traps or the bad effects from a curio or your hunger, to heal you, take stress away, or even to bring the light level back up. Besides that player aid, there is another one that is going to let you know about all the conditions and what they do. Same conditions that you're going to see in the game: buffs, debuffs, blight, stun, all the other good stuff. And then on the back of that, we do have an explanation for all of our rooms and what is going to happen when you find those rooms. For our quest that we're getting ready to go on, I'm wanting to encounter some treasure rooms, try to get some stuff, but the big one I'm going to be looking for is those objective rooms, because I have to get in there, complete the fight, and get the bones for my quests, because those bones are going to be able to be turned into XP, which I can use to increase the skills and levels of my heroes. Now, something else I want to mention while we're talking about our components here is you've noticed I've had a very hard time having everything in screen at the same time. And it's because these components are huge. They are just flat massive. The player boards, there's 4 that you have to have out of this size. And they're the size of my hand. I mean, look how big we're talking about here. And then you've got 4 of those. You've got 4 of these cards, which are 2/3 the size of the player boards. You're going to have 2 boards this size, because not only do you have to have this token for your heroes, you're going to have this board also for the enemy, because when you draw them, they're going to have a board locating where their stances are going to be. So this game is an incredible table hog. You need a massive amount of space. We're talking about a good sized dining room table at least to be able to set out everything you need to play this game. Now, the one thing it does have going for it, again, is the fact that when you are going through your dungeon, whatever it is, as you go through here and you're opening your rooms and you're encountering them, you're only going to have 1 tile out at a time. So in a traditional dungeon crawl, where you have a huge number of dungeon tiles that start to spread across your table, you are not going to have that here. Just as an example, here is our special dungeon tile that is the objective for our quests here. And you can see I can easily fit that on the board with the quest location that I have here. They both fit. You're never going to have anything bigger than this. So while all the other components are massive table hogs, the dungeon boards themselves aren't. You'll have one of these, you'll play it out. Once you're done, this gets to come off. So that is kind of replicating how the video game plays, in the fact that you have those one-off fights, and once those 4 enemies or however many enemies are taken out, you're done, you get to move on, and this comes off the board as you continue to work your way through the dungeon. And again, I do apologize if it is a little dark, a little glary. I'm trying so hard here to have the light right, but it is just incredibly difficult because all of these boards are so dark and so glossy that it is horrible to try to deal with as a YouTuber, as a videographer here. I am going to do my best, but we're going to take now and go through this dungeon just a little bit, experience a battle, let you guys see how that aspect of the game plays out. All right, so we're ready to go into our dungeon proper. And again, I'm fudging with the lights. I'm trying to have as much indirect light as possible so you guys can see. But again, it's very dark component, so it's kind of hard to work. But you're going to have this board here, and make sure you keep the tiles nearby that you're going to be using. For our first starter dungeon, that's going to be the ruins tiles. You can tell because they have that little arch up in the corner that designates they're from the ruins. If you have the expansion, you'll add those in. If you're doing a boss quest, you'll use those, so on. You'll randomly draw one of these cards and then randomly place the room tokens onto this card to designate what the rooms are. Now, you can go through this in any order, but your quest determines what you're trying to do. For us, let me grab my quest card here. We are trying to find the bones, right? So there's objective rooms. It tells you what room it is. And if we spend 2 actions in that area, we can recover the bones. And we will set aside the tomb room for this quest, as you won't get to encounter it in non-objective encounters. So every time we go to one of these objective areas, objective rooms, we're going to do this. The cool part is we get 1 XP per bone collected. So that is really cool. We can get a bunch of XP if we get all of these objective rooms. It's easier said than done depending on where those objective rooms are. Since you're randomly placing them on here, they might be all up front, they might be in the back, or they might be mixed in there. Make sure you keep your little player aid here. Come on, focus in for me. Nearby, it tells you which any of these rooms are: empty, dark, curio, treasure, and again, our objective rooms, just so you can remember what you're going to have to do for it. Now, we're here. We've got our little token. We're ready to go. I set my treasure tokens here, randomly shuffled. So again, they're ready to go. And the first thing that we have to do is decide if we're going to scout or not when we're going through this dungeon. When you scout, you get to reveal all adjacent rooms. Scouting is not that effective for us here because we're only going to reveal the first room. It's very effective if you've got multiple rooms that you haven't actually explored yet next to you, so you can reveal as many as possible. The thing is, though, there is a bonus to that, because when you're exploring, you have to roll these exploration dice, and these exploration dice have negative effects associated with them. They can be traps, they can be curios, they can be any number of things: hunger, stress, light, all that stuff. That's where our provision dice come into play as well. You can use those to negate the effects of these. Now, there's 2 different levels of difficulty when it comes to this game. I'm playing on the easier one for example purposes. In the normal game, you will roll 2 of these dice per character that you have, right? So you're going to roll 8 of these dice, 2 each, and then you have to go down the line resolving these dice or taking the damage or whatever happens, right? Losing light. In the easier version of the game, you can just roll 1 per exploration. Thing is, when it comes to scouting, if you scout, you get to roll 1 less exploration dice. So if you scout, you go from rolling in the easy game 1 die each to no die each. And if you're in the regular version of the game, then you go from 2 to 1. So it will help you, but keep in mind that that scouting will increase your stress level by 1 for each of your heroes each time you do it. You got to try to keep those stress levels down. For us, since we're right here at this first one, I see no reason to scout. We're going to explore. So we'll go ahead and just roll our die here and see what happens. So we roll our die, and let's see what we get. We got, I think that's a curio. All right, so we got a curio, we got a trap, we got rubble. That's not good. And another rubble. We got a lot of those. Okay, so there's an effect with each one of these. Unfortunately, my roll was very, very bad. And these 3 all get removed, like the negative effects get removed by using a spade, right? One of these die. I only have 2. So I'm probably not going to be able to reduce the effects from all of these. I'm probably going to try to run the trap. First one up, though, is our curio. Now, for me, since I am playing this solitaire, these die are supposed to be specific. I just run down the line here from our right to left the way it's supposed to be when it comes to targeting. Now, with this being a curio, we have to draw a curio card. Thing is, we can spend one of our torches, one of these that I have, and remove the negative effects of that. And again, you're going to see all these listed down on your exploration little player aid here. Make sure you keep this nearby. So I'm going to spend that torch, right? In this curio deck, there are good cards. There are a lot of bad cards as well. We're going to draw the top one off the deck here, and I'm spending the torch to make sure if anything bad comes from this, I am not having to eat that. So for our curio card, we have found an alchemy table, and basically it gives you a little blurb of what's going on, but then these are the effects of it. So normally I would gain 1 stress and then a bleed for 3 turns. That's 3 health coming off my guy. No, don't want that. But we spent the torch, so we're not getting those negative effects, but we are getting 5 gold. Cool. I like that. We'll go ahead and set this to the side, and I'll grab out the gold here in a sec to add to my little stash pile. So that takes care of our curio die. Now we still have a trap die to go for, and we can consume a tool to ignore it, or we have to roll for an attack. And the attack is accuracy 8, crit 2. So basically, if it's an 8 or under, we take 2 damage. If it's a 2 or under, you take 4 damage, and that's per dungeon level. Our dungeon level is 1, so it's basically what's on the card. So we'll roll our die here, and we got a, was that 6? No, 9. So we got a 9 on it, which for us is luckily going to miss. It's just over the accuracy level. So we got lucky. We don't have to worry about this trap. So we're going to take that out. Now, the last 2 things we have are rubble. We can consume a tool or suffer 1 damage, 1 heart, 1 hit point per dungeon level, and 1 stress. I don't know. I don't know that I want to waste all my tools because I would have to do that, but that would be 1 stress and 1 hit point per for each highwayman and vestal. I think I might just let him take the ding, but that's my weakest characters, so that's kind of sad. You know what? Screw it. We're just going to spend our things. It's better, I found, like in games like X-Wing and such, that it's better to get the negation when you can, because later you might try and then you end up not needing it, and it ends up burning you. So we'll go ahead and we'll just do that, because I don't want to get into a conflict and not be able to have full-powered characters. So here we are. We have gone ahead. We've explored. We get to flip our tile, and boom, right there, we got lucky. We have our objective token as the first one. Now remember, there's 3, so this isn't the end all be all. It's not like we get to walk in and walk right out. Now, the thing is, though, this game is different. We are allowed to leave the dungeon at any time we want, right? You can just stop and bail out if you're having a really bad round. Your guys are getting all torn up. So do keep that in mind. Thing is this tells us what happens there and what tile we're going to be on. So I'm going to grab that tile and then show you guys how we set up our units here. And our little green area would normally have something happening in it, but now we have a different special objective. Now we've got to collect bones from this area. So let me grab our tile for our battle. Okay, so we've got our battle board here. This shows us where everyone's going to get set up, where all the special indicators are, all that other good stuff. Let's zoom into the board real quick and touch on these points. All right, so as we're looking at our board here, this is where the battles are going to take place. And this is the part that's different from the video game. Normally in the video game, you would just have your stances. They're in their line. They're attacking back and forth. When we're looking at this, the yellowish stance icons on the board, this tells us where our guys are going to be located. The red ones that look just the same tell us where the enemy is going to be located. And then in the upper left of each one of these zones, that tells us how many people can be there. So this one can have 3, this can have 2, 3, 2, 4, 4. But unfortunately, our guys are starting a little far apart here. We got 1 stranded way the hell out over here, and then 3 up over here, but that's all right. Hellion's over here. She's going to put some hurt down in this direction, hopefully. And our objective about collecting the bones right there, but we got to spend all of our actions to do that. You guys will see how that works here in just a second. All right, so I got my enemy stance board turned to the side here to make it a little bit easier to keep everything in screen. Because again, like I said, it's big, it's expansive. It takes up a lot of the board. Now, what we're going to do for setup is we have a deck of cards that we've already shuffled up here, and these are our enemy draw cards. They will be determined by whatever scenario. When you start off, you're going to have just the common or the ruins enemies, the level 1 versions. So basically the easiest ones first is what's going to be in this deck. But as you go on, you're going to add more enemies to this deck, higher level, stronger enemies as your heroes go up in level. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw randomly from this deck of cards, and they are going to be placed here. Thing is, you do have to keep a larger set of deck of cards to the side, because some of these are just representative of large enemies. And if I don't get one here when I'm randomly drawing, I'll go through and pull one out to show you guys what I'm talking about, because they take up 2 spaces along this track rather than 1. All right, so let's start drawing for our guys. For our first one, we are going to have a bone rabble. That's not too bad. Again, you can see level 1 up here. Now, here at the bottom, here's the skills. We're going to touch on these when these guys start acting. But here at the bottom is their location. That's the big thing that we need to pay attention to when we're placing them on the board. And it's going to tell us where he wants to go first. And you're going to start filling up one direction and work your way back. Some want to start in the back, and some want to start in the front. This rabble wants to start in the front. You see, it's got the most aggressive all the way down. The last thing he wants to do is be put in the back. So we're going to place him, boom, right there. All right, so we're going to continue drawing on, see what we get next. And we got a bone soldier. The soldier has the same setup as our bone rabble over here. So we're going to place him in the next available. So if you've already filled up the front, you're going to start working your way back. All right, so he's going to go right there. Draw our next one, and we got another bone soldier. Wondering how well I shuffled these cards. I thought I'd shuffle the hell out of them, but maybe I missed it. And we're going to draw our last card, and it's another damn bone rabble. All right, maybe I didn't shuffle them as well as I thought, but it's all right. This will work for our purposes. We got 2 and 2. We're good. But we filled from the front to the back, and this is going to determine the stance for our enemies, right? So our guys are already in their stance. We got the stance for the enemy. Let me grab a example of one of those large cards real quick just to show you. Okay, just as an example here, this Brigand Bloodletter, you notice it has this symbol because it wants you to use a larger card. He takes up multiple spaces. He is a 2-space guy. Now, let's say we drew him when we already had 3 spaces filled. You would remove one that's already on the board to place him. You will always place the big guys. All right. So you're not going to get lucky and have him be drawn when you only have 1 spot left and, oh, I get to redraw. Nope. You draw a big one, you're going to take and go ahead and pull one of these off, put him on. Thing is, there are extra set of cards that are double the size, right? Like this big. So it fills 2 of these spaces. So that's why there are just these cards here as representations that show you need to go get that card for this board. All right, so boom. We got these. Now we can actually start populating our enemies and our units here on our map. All right, so I grabbed out the minis for our bad guys here, and just to let you see them, they're really cool. I gotta say, they did good as far as the nice quality minis that are in this game. I just wish I had time to paint all of them besides just the heroes, because these would look just super cool, especially if you're into something like D&D and you need some extra minis. Man, use these Darkest Dungeon ones because they're just freaking awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and grab our heroes, throw them where they're supposed to go. Our Crusader here, he's going to be in the most aggressive stance. And then our other 3 are all going to go in their spot here. And now we do the same thing for the enemy. We're going to walk down the line in the board here. He's going there, he's going there, he's going there, and he's going there. So not too bad. Enemies are spreading a line across here, and our guys are unfortunately spread out here. Crusader's going to have to pop over here, take him out, and then try to work their way up so they can get this objective. Now, thing is, you got to get the objective during the fight. You don't get the objective afterwards. So you actually have to spend those points, the action points, during the actual fight itself. You can't do it later on. Also, we do have a treasure token located here. I'll grab the top one off the stack, place it there. We'd have to use an action point to search that location. And again, you have to do it during the fight. You can't do it after you complete the fight and then get the item for free. You can't focus the enemies and then get it later. You have to do it during the battle. All right, a couple more things as far as tokens go. If you notice on the board now, there are some extra little small tokens here. This little round one, this one, and this one. These correlate to the cards so you can keep track of which enemy is which. So you've got multiple guys on the board. They're going to move around. They're not going to stay in these locations. So just so you can remember, hey, this is this bone guy. That's that bone guy. You've got these tokens that you can keep with them to ensure that the damage stays with the right guy. Just as an FYI, something I picked up on earlier, make sure you keep track of which ones are the wound tokens and which ones are the bleed tokens. They are different, but they look similar. This obviously could be considered a wound token in other games. I've seen plenty that look very similar. This is a wound token. This is a bleed token. And unfortunately enough, I have bleed abilities that I'm not going to be able to use because these guys are all bone. They don't have any stuff to bleed, so they're all immune to it. All right, so now we're ready to get started with it. We've got all our tokens. Oh, wait, I did miss one. There's another treasure token up over here. Let's grab one, throw it down right there so we can do that. Let's make sure I'm not missing any other treasure tokens. I'm not going to worry about them too much since that's my objective. I can't waste a whole lot of time since we are on a time limit going after treasure. I got to try to go after this objective. Now we've got our stack of initiative cards here. That's going to determine who goes when and what and all the other good stuff. Basically, you just shuffle these up and you're going to randomly draw one of the cards here, and that's going to determine who's going to go. And same order that's going to apply on both sides. You're going to start at the front, work your way back. So your most aggressive stance to your least aggressive stance is the order in which your initiative is going to go. So I know Crusader is going to go first. And I know Bone Rabble is going to go first of my guys and the enemies. So basically these two down over here. Also, just like in the game, if one of your characters gets taken out, you're going to move up in stance. Just like, the game worked. This character gets taken out, boom, the rest are going to slide up. Same with your guys. So let's go ahead and draw for our first initiative. We'll flip it over if I can grab it. And this indicates mine. It's got the hero head and again, a little arrow pointing to the left, indicating that we are going that direction. So I'll set those there. Boom. I know Crusader's going first. I get 2 actions with him. I can do those 2 actions twice. I can do them in any order that I want to. Those actions are going to be move, interact with the environment, change stance, or use one of my actions. So basically one of my card things over here. Obviously, I don't want to change the stance just yet. I do want to get close to this guy, try to take him out. So when we're looking at the Crusader's abilities, like I said, he's got 3. We're going to look at them, and depending on what stance he's in, determines what he gets to do. All right. Sadly, he's got a good ability, that little Holy Lance, which would take out the little skeleton over there in 1 hit, but he's not in that stance, right? But again, you want to make sure you have abilities in all of these stances, or at least most of them, because if you get moved around and you can't activate, you have no skills you can activate for that stance, can be very bad for you. Now, sadly, looking at my stances, I could hit the bone if I moved forward 1 and attacked him. I don't think that's going to do me a whole lot of good, because I could get the treasure chest there, but I still need to go up in this direction and help them out. So if I move there, it's not going to kill him. He's still going to get to activate. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm probably looking to smite, which means I'm going to have to move up all the way and waste both of my actions. So when we're looking at our cards here, that's your dodge, your health, and your move. However many of these you have is how many sections you can go. Unfortunately, this little hallway here would go 1, and moving here would be 2 into attack range. So basically, I have to move into the attack range for him to be able to potentially attack him on my next round. Before I forget to mention it, I do want to say there is before activation things you'll do, stuff like bleeds or blights, anything that's on your characters or the heroes before they activate. That's your before turn stuff. So you'll take that damage or whatever effects are taking place and tick down those counters if they are working their way down. Now, I know, just like I was talking about my skills for my Crusader, but I can also tell what this bone rabble is going to do, because just like my characters have different skills and different stances, they do as well. He is in this first stance, so he's going to use this skill. Same characteristics that apply to mine apply to his. He's going to only be able to use that at range 0 against just a single hero, and these are his stats for the attack. So I know he's going to try to move up against me to use it. And unless I stay where I'm at, he's going to be able to attack me. So it's probably going to behoove me to at least get some damage on him. I'm probably going to end up skipping this chest so I can focus on the objective. So I'll use one of my action points to move up. Use my second action point to perform the Zealous Accusation, which I can't crit because I don't have a modifier that'll cause that to crit. I wish I could. And as far as I know, I looked, I couldn't find it. I could be wrong. I think the dice are read as just flat dice because there are 10s on the cards and the die. So a 0 should be a flat out 0, which you obviously can't roll. But our accuracy is a 9, which means I need a 9 or under because the Bone Rebel here has no dodge. If he had a dodge, that would get subtracted from whatever accuracy I had before I got to activate. So at least I can try to get 5 damage onto him. So I've moved up. My second action will be to attack him with Zealous Accusation. And we'll roll our die. And we got a 1. Of course we got a 1. That would be a super crit if I had got it, but did not get the crit because I can't roll a 0. The bonus of a critical hit, too, though, is it will remove stress as well if you roll critical hits. But not able to do that right now, but I did get 5 damage onto him. So I'll grab one of the little 5 damage tokens here, throw it on, boom. Just like that, I've put a little hurt onto him. He's only got 1 health point left, so I know I'll be able to probably wipe him out on the next go-round as long as I don't zing the dice. All right, carrying on, we'll grab our initiative deck. We'll flip over our next card, and again, it's me. So my Hellion is getting ready to go. She's the next one in line, and now I get to eyeball her skills and see what I'm going to do with her. She too is like a damage dealer, and she has some decent damages. This she can do at range 1. This she can do at range 0, and it applies a stun. Or this she can do at range 0, and it applies a pretty big hit. This I could stun 2 enemies. I would probably like to get that one off, but I also want to wipe out that other one. And again, I'm just not able to get that critical hit because of the numbers. But I might be able to get this one hurt. Actually, I've rethought this because this ability stuns the enemy for 1 turn. Right? That's what that means, 1 turn stun. And she's a little faster. She's got 2 movement. So do I want to go for a stun, or do I want to go for this and just wipe out one of the enemies? I'm almost thinking wiping out one of the enemies will be better. Because just like it says in the video game, it's always better to wipe out an enemy, but you want to get those stuns too. Because the stun could take down these 2 for at least 1 round. I wouldn't have to worry about them and just have that single to go for. You know what? I think I'm going to cheese it. We're going to go for the stun. Has to be done at range 0. She can move up to 2 spaces due to her speed. So I'll go 1, 2 into there, and I'm going to hit both of them with a stun with that ability, the Barbaric Yelp, which will cause them to miss their activation for this round. So what you're going to do for different effects, you'll grab out the tokens, and however many tokens are going to be applied as are their turns that it is being applied. If you get what I mean, if someone is being stunned for 2 turns, you'll put 2 stun markers on them, and each round you'll pull one of those off, right? Same thing with bleeds, blights, buffs, debuffs, any of those effects. You'll put that many tokens on them to signify how many rounds that's going to last, all right? So we know that this one and this one are getting stunned. So we'll place the token on their cards. So when their initiative comes up, you're simply going to remove that stun and they're not going to activate. So that works really well. It takes 2 of them down for this turn. Unfortunately, only 3 people can fit there. So as long as she's keeping them stunned, I can't get anyone else in there. So I'm going to have to wipe these guys out and then come back in there, get those skeletons killed off so I can put some hurt on there. I got to leave one of them alive, though, long enough to do the objective so I can get the bones. Maybe on the next turn, I'll try to wipe one out, just one big hit. All right, so let's grab our initiative card. Should be an enemy. Yes, it'd be an enemy this time. So, same thing for them. We're going to place this on their aggressive stance, place it there to the side, and they are going to move up to their movement value and then do whatever is there. If they have multiple skills that can be used in the stance that they're in, you roll a d10 to determine which one they have. For him, he's only got a single skill, so he's just going to do the bump in the night against the closest guy. It is going to be accuracy 7 minus my dodge, which unfortunately is 0. So it's simply an accuracy 7 to attempt to do 4 damage to one of my guys. Going to be the Crusader. So he moves up 1. Keep that little 5 damage token with him so I know he is still damaged. And we will roll for him. I'm hoping for anything 8, 9, or 10 here because that'll mean he misses. And we got a 10. Perfect. That's outstanding. He missed. Okay, I got lucky on that one. I usually, when I was playing this game off camera, I was not getting a whole lot of dodges. So we'll keep that there to signify that and keep on rolling. Okay, so we're going to keep on drawing our next initiative card, which is going to be for the enemy. This one is stunned, so we pull off the stun marker. and he simply misses his turn. He misses it because he was stunned, so we don't have to worry about him. So we can just keep on drawing. Our next initiative card is going to be for one of my guys. The Highwayman is going to get to put some hurt downrange. Now, the Highwayman has some pretty decent skills. I wanted to be able to use his open vein here to do some bleeds, because those bleeds are real powerful. Unfortunately, I got all skeletons, so I can't really use that. And is there anything else I can kill them with in one hit? Yes. Point blank shot. I can kill one of those skeletons in one hit. And this one isn't stunned. That one is not stunned. So if I have the Highwayman move up to his area and hit him with open vein, which will auto hit. Oh, wait, no, that's only 5. He's got 6 health. Damn, not enough. I can't get the crit through. No, it's point blank shot. That's what I'm wanting. I was looking at the wrong one. Hit him with point blank shot. That will wipe him out. Yes, yes. Love point blank shot. That's good stuff. Wait, is he in the right stance to do it? I got to make sure. No, and that's my mistake. I keep forgetting. That's the one thing that kind of trips me up a little bit with this game, is making sure that I keep track of what stance I can use these abilities. And no, I can't use that one. So I'm going to have to use a different one. It's not going to be open vein. It'll probably have to be this one. And I do get a mark. Or actually, that would be +2 versus marked. And I'm not sure if there's any of these that mark them. I don't believe there are. That's going to apply a mark. So we're probably just going to have to go with just a regular pistol shot. Not enough damage to put through. But if I luck out and roll a 1, doubt that's going to happen. I might be able to get him wiped out. But that's what we're going to go for our Highwayman. We'll push him up 1. He's going to take his shot. Come on, Highwayman. Roll a 1. Take that skelly out. You'll give me some extra time to try to get that treasure. That is an 8, which is enough to hit. Barely. So he will also take 5 damage. All right, so 5 damage has been applied. Let's keep drawing our initiative cards. And our next one is going to be the enemy. And he's going to activate same one that I just shot at, which should be, which one is this? Bone Soldier. Have not activated one of these yet. He is in the 3rd range. He's going to do his first skill. Can be done without moving. And he has the potential to crit. It's pretty much similar to what he had just done. Only difference is the Highwayman does have an innate dodge of 1. So he will add that to this. So it's accuracy 8 and crit 0. So he does not have the ability to crit, which is nice, thanks to his little bit of dodge. So hopefully a 9 or a 10 here would be really nice, not to take any hurt. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, that one got lucky. Yeah, perfect. Sweet. Damn. Let's just draw our last couple of cards. Should be Vestal. Vestal, I don't know that I'm going to have anything that I can actually put a little good stuff down range. Let's see here. She has a nice healing ability. Vestal, if you don't know, is the basic healer. She does a good job for it. And let's see, her Mace Bash, she can do at range 1. So I could potentially take out that Skelly with her Mace Bash. And she gets +1 versus Unholy, or she has Dazzling Light, which applies a stun as well at range 1. So she could stun and increase the light level. That is outstanding. Let's check her stance. She's all the way in the back. So the only thing she can't do is her Mace Bash, but she can do her Dazzling Light, which would stun, but it wouldn't matter. It's going to kill anyway. Unless I'd like to apply a stun to one of these guys again, which might, but I think it'd be better to go ahead and kill them. All right, so Vestal. Little Vestal here is going to move up, and she's going to go into the hallway, and she's going to roll for her attack. Anything but a 10 will be yummy. 9. Oh, that was close. Roger that, which will kill our skeleton here because he does a couple more damage. Would have been stunned, but no biggie. We've got her taken care of. That was her 2 actions as well. Now, Since that skeleton got killed, he's in this location. He'd already activated. So we pull his card off. The next card slides up. I've only got one card left for the initiative track, which I know is going to be for them, and it's going to be taken out by this stun effect. So he's not going to activate. So for our first round of the 4 that we get, we did good. We eliminated one. We were able to stun a couple others to keep them from activating and got ungodly lucky at basically our dodge rolls there. And we still got one skeleton left here that's damaged. That gives me time with the Crusader to move up, try to get this little bit of treasure here and get the objective here where I can grab the bones and get those experience points once I leave the dungeon. Now, to be fair, I got relatively easy enemies here to start with, so it wasn't too hard. Just as an FYI to show you guys, when you do get the treasures, you'll get things like this, which this one's actually pretty good. You can roll and get that amount of gold. This time it would be ×2 on the D10, which could be up to 20, which would be great. Or you could pick a provision to take. The different types of treasure tokens are going to have things like that, extra provisions, some gold, stuff like that that you can use to help your way through the dungeon. Now, one of the coolest parts, and the part that I think kind of confuses people the most here, is the fact that it has to do with the stances, and it's hard for me to keep it in my mind with their skills that they can't be used everywhere. Now, of course, if you're a huge Darkest Dungeon fan, you've been playing the video game a lot, probably be easier for you. Thing of it is, for those of us who haven't played it as much, I found it's a little hard to keep it in your mind that you can't use all your skills all the time. Some skills can only be used in certain places, and it's the same way with the enemy. So you have to make sure and keep that in your mind, especially if you are not familiar with the Darkest Dungeon video game series. And other boons as well, because I just realized I was missing the little buff here for being at light level 5, which gives me a little bit extra dodge, just one extra dodge for all my guys. Makes it a little bit harder to hit. You'd be surprised how much that dodge would affect. I got lucky in my dodge rolls anyway, so it didn't really matter. But having an extra point or 2 in dodge is huge in this game. But that right there is the basics of how you're going to play Darkest Dungeon. You're going to continue on through that dungeon series, opening rooms, checking rooms, doing the curio cards, spending your provisions, trying to have enough, and then you're going to take that back to town where you're going to do things like level up your heroes or increase the level of their skills by spending points, right? Spending those experience points, because having the higher level skills is crucial to making your heroes stronger. Now, something that's different in this game that I wish they found a way to incorporate is there isn't as much staying power to the game, but you can't forget that you've only got so much. You only have so many of these basically respawn tokens when you lose a hero to create a new hero, to join your team, to keep on going. And the way this game plays, which is different from the video game, is when you lose a hero, they're out of the game. You're not able to bring them back into it. So if I lose the Crusader, I basically lose the Crusader. Not as sure that I like that as much. All right, so you've seen the basics of Darkest Dungeon and how it runs. There is so much more going on here besides just what I've shown you. The dungeons get a lot deeper. There's bosses. There's an expansion for it. There's numerous things going on with this game. A lot of things to actually enjoy here. There are a few drawbacks. One, something I've got to mention, even though it doesn't really affect the gameplay, is the fact that I didn't like how the company handled the distribution of the game. I understand to an extent some of the choices that they made, but I don't agree with it. And what I mean by all that is the fact that they charged extra for shipping after we'd already paid for it. And I understand there's like a cost associated with it, and costs had gone up and things like that. But truth be told, that wasn't, my mistake. That was y'all's mistake. Now, I went ahead and paid the costs because I wasn't going to get the game. Honestly, I did not trust them to deliver the game that I had paid for, and it was a cost benefit analysis. I think I had to pay something like $20, maybe a little more, to insure it, but they essentially doubled the shipping charges that we had already paid. And then those who didn't or couldn't weren't able to get the game, and they're just going to wait until, yeah, whenever they get a chance to get it around to them. I don't like that. I don't think companies should go that route. Kickstarters have changed it. A lot of them are waiting to charge shipping until the end, right there before they're getting ready to deliver, which I'm fine with. I'm cool with you doing that, and make sure you charge the right amount for shipping as long as you're upfront and let people know. I don't like it when you back end me and say, hey, if you don't give me a little bit now, then you're just not going to get your game. I think that's shady. It's personal opinion on it. Now, as far as the game itself goes, this is what you would call a dungeon crawler. You got your minis, you got your heroes, you got their skills, the dashboards, same thing that we've seen in so many other games. The difference is this one's associated with an IP, Darkest Dungeon. And I've got to give it to them 100% credit. They did a good job of translating that experience down to the tabletop. Components, absolutely outstanding. The minis are beautiful. The cardboard is nice and thick, and the cards are nice looking as well. Don't have a problem with the cards. I do have a problem with all of the, not necessarily the tokens, but definitely the tiles. Any boards, any tiles, anything like that, any larger piece of cardboard is too dark. It's way too dark. You notice I set it all the way through filming because I was struggling to get my light at just the right level to be able to light up the board enough for people to see it, but not over glare it. Now, I understand the glossy coating doesn't affect most people because they don't have to worry about getting that sheen on there for filming, but it was to the level that it's going to interfere with it just basic ambiance if you're playing with the game. And I could see people trying to play this game where they're having to tilt the components around to be able to just read them, to just play them. They made that mistake that Resident Evil 2 did, and they, true to form, got to give them credit, they did release basically an updated pack of tiles that you could get, and it was free or shipping, just depending on what you backed. But regardless, it brightened up the tiles. I understand it. These games are dark. They're supposed to be dark. It's freaking called Darkest Dungeon. But that doesn't mean make the tiles so dark that you can't see them. It's like they toned the light way down. And did they not have the ability to see this in post-production? Like right there, they get preview copies of it before they ship it. And they had to have known it was too dark then. My guess is they were saying, it's good enough to go ahead and go now, rather than waiting on them having to redo all of these tiles and whatnot. That was wrong choice. It was way too dark. The tiles definitely need to be lightened. They're not too dark to play the game, but it really does set the tone for it. It's that ease of access, right? The quality of play is definitely diminished by the tiles themselves and how dark and how glossy they are. It's just not a good combination. Had they been brighter, okay. Had they been less glossy, okay. The combination of the two is not good. Now that will bring us back, though, to the fact of the gameplay itself. Here's where I'm at on this. If you are a Darkest Dungeon fanatic, or even if you just like the video game itself and you're into board games, right? Those two, yeah, cool, 100%. This is definitely for you, right? If you are really into that, you're really going to enjoy this, because it does translate rather well, not perfectly, but rather well, down to the board game version. They did have to add some stuff to it because no one would have liked it if it was just the two stance boards. And I wondered a little bit, during pre-production, how it was going to work. How are they going to translate that down into a board game where it made some sense? And I think they did good by having rooms that you're going to be in that you could move around and actually make some tactical decisions. That makes sense, and I'm good with it. And of course, you've got the stance changes. Biggest thing for me is, for someone who's not a huge Darkest Dungeon aficionado, is making sure I'm keeping track in my mind of, I can't use all my skills in all the different spots because I've got to be at the different stance. And it was one extra level of something to keep track of that I wasn't 100% used to. I'm used to in some type of dungeon crawl, whatever it is, that whatever skills I've got are the skills that I've got and I can use them. But now I had to worry about my position. And I honestly, I like it. I like the tactical element that brings to it. It just has the personal element of myself, making sure I don't accidentally use skills for either myself or the enemy in a stance that they shouldn't normally be allowed to use that in. However, if you are not a huge Darkest Dungeon fan, is this a dungeon crawl that you should look into getting? Truth be told, probably not. Probably not. And the reason I say that is that there are so many ungodly amounts of dungeon crawls out there that have buckets of minis, tiles, cards, tokens, and the whole like, right? Huge number out there that you can choose from. If you're not into Darkest Dungeon, if it's not one of your all time favorite video games, then yeah, you could probably look and find a better tabletop RPG game that you're going to have fun with over this one. The amount of table space that the game takes, and honestly, I really think they could have reduced some of the boards down just a little bit, rearranged things. It's just a huge table hog. And then the gameplay is deep, but it's only deep to the extent that a Darkest Dungeon player is really going to get and understand. For others, they might think it's a little more basic in the fact that you just have that small dungeon that you're going through, flipping your room tile, seeing what's there, and then you're fighting in just one room. If you're used to that sprawling dungeon as you move through the corridors and find bigger rooms, things like that, this game might throw you off because it will feel more constrained. It's not going to give you that open, huge expanse, but that's not what it's supposed to be. So I can understand. So ultimately, yes, I like Darkest Dungeon. I think it's a fun game, but I think it's a fun game for specific people. I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. And there are definitely component upgrades that could be made in the future. However, I would like to see them make Eratus, right? They've got Darkest Dungeon 2 and they've got Eratus. Don't make Darkest Dungeon 2 the board game. I don't think it's going to be much different. Don't do that. No. Eratus, though, I think that would be a good one. If they wanted to take that and turn that into a board game version, honestly, I think I would like that more than I like Darkest Dungeon. I like that necromancer feel where I'm building zombies and vampires and wraiths and mummies, that type of thing. Those are my heroes, and we're attacking the village and doing, necromancer type pillaging. I would love to have a board game version of that. And honestly, I would be surprised if they're not looking into it because Darkest Dungeon was a big success. It really did well on its Kickstarter. So hopefully they'll make those improvements, some of these quality of life things, lightening the damn tiles, and make Eratus in the future. Really like to see that. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Y'all take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.